Hey, good morning, everybody. So today we're going to go over the market update for November 2024. Hopefully, we can give you some good insights here to help you as you're navigating your business and conversations with your clients out there. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As always, we're taking a look at basically the triangle area. And for our purposes, that's going to be Wake County, Durham County, Johnston, Orange, and Chatham counties. And again, we're looking at November 2024. All right, so new listings in November were up 8.6%. So you can see November of 2024, we had 1,992 new listings hitting the market versus 1,834 that hit the market November of last year. Year to date, we're up 12.6% in terms of new listings hitting the market. So this is an awesome metric for us to understand and look at, because what we've needed in our market for several years now is additional listings hitting the market, additional inventory. And so when we think about the fact that transaction count has been coming down for a couple of years now, one of the things that we need to have in place in order to reverse that trend are new listings hitting the market. Now, we're going to look at inventory in a couple minutes. That's a little bit different because that's representative of, well, how many of these new listings are actually hanging out until the next month. So how many of them are being absorbed by the market, by the current buyer demand. But in a vacuum, looking at new listings hitting the market, this is a great thing. We need these new listings coming up. And of course, this time of the year, new listings are going to be down seasonally. But relative to the prior year, up 8.6%. So loving that. And we've kind of maintained that trend of being up about 12.5% for the year. All right, closed sales down 6.5%. November of this year versus November of 2023. That's in line with what we saw at Choice as well. So transactions were down a little bit, but keep in mind the closings that occurred in November, these were written in September and October. The contracts were. And what was happening then? Interest rates were going up. And so we saw after the Fed rate cut in September that literally that day, mortgage rates started to climb, and they kept climbing basically through October. We've now seen a few weeks of mortgage rates drop. And so that's going to be a significant impact as we think about fast forwarding to what are our January numbers going to look like. So be on the lookout for that video that's going to come out in February talking about January numbers. But yeah, so it makes sense that closings would be down in November as buyers started pulling back a little bit in September and October as those rates started going up. So year to date, we're down 2.8% in terms of number of closed transactions in these 5 counties, right at 24,000 total transactions. So I'll put that number into more perspective for you in just a couple minutes as well. All right, median sales price up 3.4% in November of this year compared to last year. That's at $450,000. If you think back to last month, the median sale price was actually up a little bit from that. It was like 451, 452. So keep in mind, we're comparing to the same period, the same month from the year before. It's normal that median and average sale prices would come down as we approach the end of the year. But when we look at the same month last year, we're actually up 3.4% at 450. Year to date, we're up 2.3%. I like seeing now, of course, homeowners out there want to see this number higher, right? You want to see prices going up. When we think about the health of the market, we do want to see kind of muted price growth, in my opinion. So if we can keep that price growth below inflation rates, I think that's beneficial for the market. Again, we're going to talk about this 450 number in more context in just a minute because prices are still elevated because of the COVID spike that we saw. Even though prices have been somewhat moderated the last 2 years, I think, as I've been talking about for several years now, we want to see these numbers stay. Appreciation rates for housing stay more in that 2% range. I think that's going to allow things to catch up and create kind of a healthier, balanced market, or at least give us the opportunity to get into that kind of healthy, balanced market. All right, so let's look at percent of original list price received. So again, this is relative to when it hit the market, what the price was, not if there were price reductions. And we're at 99% last year at this time, slightly higher, 99.3. So maybe there's a little more margin there for negotiation than there was a year ago. But we've seen some opportunity to negotiate on listings out there, especially if they sit a little bit for a few weeks. So All right, inventory. Now, again, inventory is a point in time metric. So that's looking at the same day every month and saying how many houses are for sale today. Inventory is up 0.6% from last year. And that is a gross number there of 5,431. So again, I'll give you some more context and perspective on that number here in a second. And then the month supply of inventory, we're at 3 months. Last year at this time, we were at 2.8 months. So not a huge swing there. Again, that's just a representation of how long would it take to sell all of the current inventory if no new listings hit the market. We've got about 3 months of inventory there. So still low, still puts us in a seller's market. If you look at it in those terms, usually somewhere 4 to 6 months is going to be what a lot of people would consider a balanced market. And then north of 6 months, you start getting into a buyer's market. So, all right, now, one of my favorite things to do is compare these numbers to where we were pre-COVID. So the last comparable time period before the COVID market kind of threw everything into the blender. And so that would be November of 2019. All right, so let's look at inventory levels in 2019. 8,076 homes on the market. Again, I just told you 5,431. So our inventory is still really low. Just as a primer or a refresher for those of you who weren't in the business in November of 2019, inventory was very low then. It felt like we could not find homes for our buyers. There weren't enough homes out there to satisfy the buyer demand. And so we're well below where we were then. And even if we were at this number, even if we had 8,000 homes in inventory right now, that's still not going to be enough to satisfy the buyer demand that I believe is out there kind of lying in wait. And we'll talk more about that. But so inventory is still real low compared to pre-COVID. Month supply, 3 months. So that's right where we are here. But again, this is because there was plenty of demand to eat up this inventory. So I believe that demand is still there. And it's why I think this idea of new listings hitting the market is so critical. We need these listings to come on to support the demand that I think we're going to see coming to the table in 2025. And when I say demand, I mean active buyers searching. I think there are lots of buyers out there who want to buy homes right now. And so they're going to switch from, hey, I would buy a home to, hey, I'm looking for a home. There's a ton. I mean, I don't even know how to describe what I think that kind of the pool of people who will become home buyers looks like right now. And so we need that inventory to keep ratcheting up to support that demand when it hits the table. All right, let's look at median sales price. 2019, November 2019, 300,000. We're at 450 right now. So let's put that into some more perspective. And let's consider if we saw house price appreciation at 5.5%. That's a reasonable number in our market if we look at where in kind of whatever normal times would be, what a healthy appreciation could be for the housing market, considering the numbers we have for inbound migration, the demand we have for housing in our market. We're going to see appreciation outpace inflation. That's just the way it's going to work in our market. We're fortunate to live in one of the most desirable areas in the country. So appreciation could certainly be above 5.5%. But I like to look at just a healthy 5.5% appreciation. Where would we be today if that was straight line appreciation without the COVID spike that we saw? And that would put us at $392,000. So a couple things here. Number one, even if prices stayed flat, so we're up year to date 2.3%, but even if we were up zero, we could have zero price growth in 2025, zero price growth in 2026. And that would only just start to get us back onto line with where we would have been without the COVID price spike. So we still have a lot of runway that even if we're not seeing huge price growth over the next couple of years, that people who own homes shouldn't feel shortchanged, at least if they own their home since 2019. Of course, it always depends on when you bought your home. But even if we had zero price growth for the next 2 years, the person who bought their home in November of 2019 could say, okay, well, I still saw 5.5% appreciation on my home, even with 0% price growth for the past 2 years. So a lot of runway there. But it also goes to show that if a homeowner is selling their home today, and maybe they feel like they're not getting as much as they thought they were going to get, maybe a neighbor's home a year ago sold for more. It's important to help remind them of how much additional equity they have just because of what's happened over the last 4 years. that they aren't getting shortchanged just because maybe it's not as high as it would have been a year ago or during the summer months. So they still have a lot of excess equity thanks to that rapid appreciation growth we had in 2020 and 2021. All right, let's look at new listings in November. Excuse me. In November of 2019, we had 2,537 new listings come on. Okay, we only had 1,900. We were less than 2,000 in November of this year. So still way down in terms of number of new listings that we would expect to come on in a healthy market, even in the month of November. And then closed sales, we had over almost 2,700 in November 2019. And we only had 1,800 this month. So that's a huge drop. So if you're one of those agents who feels like, there are plenty of agents out there who 2024 is the best year they've ever had in their career. So that's fantastic. If you aren't one of those agents, give yourself some grace. I mean, look at the year-to-date numbers. In 2019 through November, there were over 32,000 closed transactions. Year-to-date in 2024, only 24,000. That's a delta of more than 8,000 transactions, or 33%, or depending on how you look at it, 25% fewer closings relative to 2019. Guys, there aren't as many transactions out there to be had, right? So if you aren't setting personal records for your transaction count in 2024, give yourself some grace. Again, there's no question there is a ton of built up demand. The notion that people don't want to own homes is ridiculous. The millennials, the buyers who are in prime home buying years, they're ready to buy homes. Those that maybe can't because of affordability issues are ready to go once that gets cured. Plenty of demand out there. So you need to be prepared, because if we see this inventory continue ratcheting up some, or new listings ratcheting up, that's going to be a critical element to help keep prices moderated and give buyers something to buy as they begin to enter the market. So well off from where we were in 2019. We have a lot of upside potential in our market. My crystal ball is no more clear than anyone else's, so I don't know what's going to happen in 2025 specifically. But there's a lot of upside here. We have a lot of ground to make up, and there is demand to do that. So keep a positive outlook. I certainly have a positive outlook on what 2025 will be like, 2026, 2027. We have a bright future here, especially in the triangle market. So let's look at a couple more things, and then we're going to wrap this video up for the November market update. Let's just look at inventory levels. Again, if we look at what a typical market is, whatever that is, you would typically see inventory levels increase as we get into the summer months. Usually in our market, it's going to peak somewhere between April and June. Sometimes it could peak in July, but somewhere in that time frame. And then it's going to steadily decrease into December, to when we'll start to see inventory start climbing again in January. Of course, the numbers are a little skewed here, right? We didn't see any real increase in inventory as we got into April. We finally started seeing some increase when we got into May. Technically, right now, the peak was actually in October. So we would normally expect here in August and September and October, November for the numbers, inventory levels to decline. We did see a slight drop off here in November, and we'll see what December brings and then into January. But if we can continue those new listings hitting the market, especially as we get into January, I think 2025 will be off to a good start. All right, another ratio that I like to look at is the number of new listings to closings ratio. So this is how many listings need to hit the market in order to have a closing. And so if we look at 2024, where we are year to date, we're at 1.31. So another way to look at that, if it was 1.33, so we're close enough to that, that means 4 listings need to hit the market in order to sell 3 of them. It's a little higher than I'd like to see it be. We look at 2020 and 2021, we were basically at 1, and theoretically you shouldn't be able to get below 1 because you need a listing to hit the market in order to have a closing. There could be an off-market transaction, things like that could impact it. But basically, you should never be able to get below 1. But boy, were we close in 2020 and 2021. I think a healthy place to be. It all has to do with trajectory, of course, that impacts how we're feeling. 2023 was a tough year for a lot of agents out there in terms of transaction count was falling. But that 1.2, so having to take roughly 6 listings in order for 5 of them to sell, I think that's a pretty healthy place to be. So if we're in there somewhere between 1.15, 1.25, I think is a really great place for us to be living. As long as we're getting enough new listings to support the demand, I think that's a healthy place for us to be. Inventory is churning. And so we'll continue to keep an eye on this. There's a good chance this will end the year somewhere around here. We have been slowly declining throughout the year, so we could get below 1.3 when the December numbers come in. We'll see. Either way, this is why if you're an agent and you've had listings that you've had to take off the market. I know that we've had agents calling us and saying, hey, how do I take a house off the market? They've never had to do it in their whole career, because you look at how strong the numbers have been for a decade. And that's why. But now we're seeing that it takes more listings hitting the market to close, which just means you're going to have some not selling, some that are coming off the market for one reason or another. So that's what that number tells us. The higher this number gets, the more houses that will be listed that ultimately will not sell during that listing period and will be taken off. Now they may get relisted, but then that same house is now 2 new listings that hit the market during that year. So hopefully that makes sense for you. But this is a ratio I like to look at. I think it gives us a good idea of what the churn is in the market and how difficult it is in the market to sell a home at that point. And then the last thing we'll look at quickly is the affordability index. Got the 2023 and 2024 numbers up here for perspective. And then when we look at October of 2019 at 140. So at 100, that means that the median income can afford the median priced home. In October of 2019, households had a lot more money, so 40% more money than they needed to afford the median priced home. And so that's a very affordable market to be in. As you get below 100, it means you have less money than you need to afford the median home. And we've been so low for so long. We're here 2 years here now, well below 100. This is the single number that if you're looking to watch something to see, okay, when is the buyer demand going to pick up? It's this number. This is tells us what how much money buyers are making relative to how much things cost. And interest rates are going to be a huge driving factor on this. So if we can get some moderation in interest rates, this will drive affordability up, assuming that wages stay at their current levels and hopefully increasing. Inflation continues to come down, home prices stay moderated, and interest rates come down. That's going to impact affordability. So as we see this trend, this number start to trend upward, that we're moving in a great direction. So if we see new listings continuing to hit the market, affordability continuing to improve, those are strong signs that we will see a recovery in terms of transaction count in our market. So we'll continue to watch this closely. Hopefully this was all good perspective for you. Get some data points here that you can talk with your clients about, help you form strategies with your client. But in short, I do believe 2025 looks like it's going to be a strong year. We should see an improvement. We should see a reverse of trend in terms of transaction count. I think that will improve in 2025 over 2024 as we see new listings hitting the market and more buyers becoming active buyers in our market as well. So if you have questions about the market, always feel free to reach out to me. Love talking real estate with you and everyone else. So until next time, make it a great day.